Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you for joining us for, I think this is our fifth show of the week. What are we thinking? Welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We hope you can hear my echo in the background. This is one of those shows this week with Tottenham, as you can tell, with Tottenham in a transfer window, nothing seems to go right. I know people were laughing about last night with Michael Bridge, bless him, where we finally got Bridgie after managing to get him some premium Wi-Fi. We've got a very, very special guest joining us. But first up, delighted to be welcoming tonight, I've got Matt Hayes, of course, who runs a wonderful YouTube channel. Matt, lovely to have you here. How are you, firstly?
Okay, thanks, Millie, for having me on. Always a pleasure being on with you guys, and lovely to meet Lyall as well.
Absolutely. Now, of course, we had this man on our show around a week ago, Lyall, maybe 2 weeks ago. And I said to Lyall, do you want to come back? Is it worth coming back? Because you just feel with Tottenham at the moment that there is obviously stuff bubbling. You'd like to think so. And I know that, again, just to be clear, I know there's a lot of frustration out there, clearly by Tottenham's lack of incoming so far. We're 27 days into a transfer window. I think we're all absolutely, adamant Spurs need to strengthen. There's a need to, again, give Conte what he needs to back the manager. And again, to leave it this late, obviously is concerning. But this is why we've got Lyall here to hopefully give us some news. So delighted to have back on the Last One on Spurs. You've got the brilliant Lyall Thomas from Sky Sports. Lyall, how are you? Thank you for joining us again.
Good, thank you. No problem. Happy to be here. Plenty going on. Plenty's happened since, so there's plenty to talk about. And you're talking about, you're asking me about Antonio Conte and how he's might or might not be feeling at the moment. And I know we talked about it before, didn't we? At some length about whether he's happy with things or not at the moment. I said it then a little bit, and I'll say it again now from the people I'm talking to. I think the reports that he's certainly reports that he would be willing to walk out and all this kind of stuff if he didn't get what he wants in this window are completely overblown. I think a lot of what he said has been taken out of context, to be honest. So I wouldn't, I don't think anybody should be thinking that is some eventuality that's going to happen if Tottenham don't sign any players this month. I don't see that happening at all. He was under no illusions, I think, when he came into Tottenham that of the situation of the club, the financial situation of the club, the stature of the club and the level that they were at and what needs to be done. So I don't think he's an experienced manager. He's not expecting them to pull up trees, in the first window that comes along. I think really the real test will be in the summer window. I think it's going to be a very important summer window for them. I think they've been doing, and I know they've been doing a lot of work towards that summer window in this transfer window as well. So, if Antonio Conte sees that Tottenham are trying very hard, they're being ambitious and they're doing a lot of good groundwork, especially towards the summer, then I don't think there's any reason why he would be particularly upset. I mean, obviously they need one or two things in this window. They're trying to do one or two things in this window just to give them that extra kick up and try and secure that fourth spot. That's what they're trying to do at the moment, working very hard on it. And I expect them to bring a player in, at least one player in before the end of the window. So and a player of good caliber. So I can't imagine that Antonio Conte would be too disappointed. Whatever the eventuality is, whether they bring in 1, 2, or even more.
So just to be clear on that, Lyall, as far as you're concerned on Conte, and you can't have said it any clearer there. There shouldn't be panic among Spurs fans that he's going to walk away as of this moment.
No, that's not the impression that I'm getting. I mean, obviously he's spoken about some of his frustrations in the media, but that's normal of any manager. And I think that we knew that the Tottenham situation was not good when he arrived. Generally, I think the mood in the squad, the malaise in the squad, the morale generally around the club was pretty low. I mean, the morale's very, very low among the fans as well. At that point, so that's always a giveaway as well about what's going on inside the club, and things have improved dramatically, I think, since then. So no, like as I said, a lot of it's been overblown, taken out of context.
Okay, well, listen, we really appreciate you covering that first off, because again, hopefully that will, give us some reassurance and set us a little bit down for, again, what's going to be, let's be honest about it, a difficult 72 hours and more ahead of the closing of this window, because I think a lot of us feel there should have been business done very early on. Whilst, again, we're on this show pragmatic, we're honest, we understand it's not easy to do deals. It can sometimes be harder to get players out than those coming in. So we'll cover that as well. But before we do, let's go along to Matt to kick off things. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, like, look, we've kind of seen reports the whole way throughout the window that Tottenham are looking to make 3 signings, and the main positions that have been mentioned are right wing back, central midfielder, and a striker. Would you be able to tell us kind of the specific positions that Tottenham are still looking at to recruit for the rest of this window?
Well, I think you just said them. I mean, we've known that right wing back and midfield, well, right wing back and a striker were the 2 ones in the main. And a midfielder as well, obviously, depending on who's going to be leaving before the end of the window. So those have been the priorities. I think at the moment we're seeing that they're looking at. I mean, Luis Diaz seems to be the prime target at the moment. So he is somebody who can obviously play anywhere across the front. I mean, predominantly he's been playing off the left. He's right-footed. Obviously a very good player, very highly skillful. He's made significant steps every season that he's been playing now, and especially this season, he's made another leap up. So this is the kind of player that they're looking at, a forward, someone who can play in the wide positions, off the left, off the right, and also someone I think who can play a little bit through the middle as well if they want to play 2 up top and somebody alongside Harry Kane. So I think that's the priority at the moment. Obviously, as well, though, there are a lot of things happening with Tanguy Ndombele and Dele Alli at the moment. And obviously, I think they want to move out Giovanni Lo Celso as well, if they can. So I think, obviously, bringing in another midfield player, if one of those or more of those leaves, obviously, then also becomes a priority. So I think those are the 2 positions that are the priority. And so, when you say a striker, I think it's now become a sort of a winger striker in one player rather than 2.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Lyall. You mentioned him there, Luis Diaz. Listen, it's a player that has got an incredible ratio this season in terms of goal scoring, in terms of games. I think it's 14 goals in just 17, 18 league games. Quite a phenomenal record. Looks like a really, really good player. Definitely one that would be a statement signing for Tottenham. Could you just tell us at the moment just how close is that deal to happening as far as you're concerned and aware?
It's not very close. I wouldn't say that it's in the final stages or anything like that at the moment. I think what's happened so far is Tottenham have indicated what they would like to pay for him in the discussions, which is somewhere around the £46 million mark as a package. We're told 45 million euros plus 10 on add-ons was the initial offer, if you like. I mean, not a formal offer, but sort of this is what we feel he's worth. This is what we think we want to pay for him. I'm not aware that that's been outright rejected, but I think that it's the indication, the information that's been given back is that wouldn't be enough. So if they're going to make a formal offer, I think it will have to be higher than that. I'm not aware of whether they've made a formal offer yet, but talks have been ramped up today. Negotiations have been going on throughout the day for him. So, usually we're at the time now of the day as a journalist, especially during the transfer window, where the information starts to come in. Because what happens, especially at this time, is that people are locked away in meetings during the day. So usually you'll find is, or I find certainly, is you wake up in the morning, you've got a lot of messages, some missed calls, perhaps things that you need to answer, new information that's transpired late at night, that's come through, or early in the morning, which is either giving you an idea of what's happened the night before or what's going to happen through the day. And then obviously, we make the relevant checks that you need to, and if you're happy to report something, you go ahead and report it. But then also during the day, you're trying to get the information to come out as well while negotiations are ongoing. And sometimes you'll get drip fed bits of information as it's going on. And sometimes you might not get something until the end of the day if talks are pretty intense. So that's what we've seen today. I think we're starting to see that now. The information is starting to come out of these meetings throughout the evening. Luis Diaz, I know there's been some discussions and negotiations today. So as I said, he seems to be target number 1 for Spurs at the moment, and they're pushing hard to get him.
Can I ask you, Lyall, but before Matt comes in, and ask you about Traore and the situation around where that has gone and how that has happened.
Mm-hmm.
On Diaz, there's been lots of rumours about, again, the player potentially not being interested in Tottenham, and this is what I can't quite understand. And again, this is an opportunity for you to maybe, explain on this point. Why would 2 clubs go into talks if that player had no interest in coming to the club? I mean, the player must have some form of a desire to come to the football club if both the clubs are negotiating. So clearly there must be a will from the player to join the club if they're in negotiations. Can we take that as a given, right? Because again, there's speculation that the player may not feel Tottenham's the right club for him. Can you add some clarity on that point?
Well, it's an indication of being willing to listen to what the club has to say that wants to sign you, isn't it? I mean, it's being willing to sit down and listen to the offers and listen to the plans that they have for you. Once that they have permission to speak to you. So that's what it is. It's indications from from people around the player as you gather information as to are we chasing a dead end or are we not chasing a dead end? And very experienced people in the market, people like Fabio Paratici are very experienced and long in the tooth, and will be avoiding going down wild goose chases, for players that they know don't want to come to them. So yes, you're right to an extent. They'll be aware of a willingness to at least listen to what they have to say. And clubs are very bullish about these things. They'll always back themselves to be able to convince a player to join them, and they'll to use all the assets that they've got to convince a player to come. It's a significant part of the process. Is the what it takes to actually convince the player to come and join you, especially over other clubs if there are others going for them. I mean, I think we've seen that at Newcastle, certainly, is that they seem to have spent a lot of time recently on players that I think not necessarily players that don't want to join them, but they've certainly spent a lot of time on players at clubs who are very, very reluctant to sell those players. And that's what they found at the moment. So, yeah, you need to do your homework first. You need to have a good idea of, how much of a gap, how much leeway, how much of a wiggle room you've got to maneuver to try and get the player and get the deal done.
Yeah, I think that kind of nicely brings us into our next question, because as Ricky mentioned there a second ago with Adama, you said there with Luis Diaz, the way he can play anywhere across that front line, and in a summer or in a transfer window where we're not really going to be able to fix the entire squad, I think Spurs are looking for players who can be a bit versatile and play in different positions, and maybe that's something that was going to be expected of Adama Traore. But now with Barcelona in advanced talks looking to sign him, we're hearing that perhaps that is one of the reasons why Adama didn't want to make that move to Tottenham. Is that the only reason this has happened, or is there more to it?
Well, what I'm told is that he just has a great affinity with Barcelona. I mean, he was there in the academy, wasn't he? And once you've played for Barcelona, once you've been in that environment, there's a lot of sentimentality that goes into it. So I think that's got a lot to do with it. I know he's always had one eye on going back to Spain. I think he had unfinished business in Spain, and that's a huge part of it as well that shouldn't be underestimated. I mean, if it was any other club, then I think Spurs would be in an even better position to get Adama, but the Barcelona thing. So I'm not really sure that playing as a right wing back. From what I was told, that the right wing back thing was only ever going to be really temporary anyway. It was only going to be something until the summer, and then Spurs would look at the position again and bring in more of a specialist in that position. But obviously they wanted Adama to be willing to play there when they wanted him to play there, I think, rather than saying, right, you're going to come in and you're going to be a right wing back and that's it. I don't think that was what the suggestion was at all. So from what I've been told today, the pull of Barcelona sounds to be the deciding factor. And it's a very interesting one, though, because it really remains to be seen how easy it's going to be for Barcelona to register him, because they couldn't register Ferran when they signed him from Manchester City without negotiating another deal with Samuel Umtiti to reduce his wages. And I'm not aware that anything has changed financially since then in terms of their wage budget. In fact, I know that it hasn't. Nothing's changed in terms of their wage budget and being able to register players. Now, I'm not sure if the loan aspect creates a solution there, that if there's going to be a loan and Wolves are going to still pay some of his wages and Barcelona will pay some of them, then that might allow them to register him until the summer. But again, the situation comes around the summer, and obviously this all ties in as well with the Ousmane Dembele situation at Barcelona, because certainly if they want to bring in somebody on a permanent deal, they need to get a player out on a permanent deal, and that has to be the player they want that to be is Ousmane Dembele. They've told him again in a meeting not 2 days ago that you have to find another club because you won't sign the terms on that we've offered you. So you have to do that if you want to stay. Otherwise, go and find another club. And at the moment, it's very hard to see where Ousmane Dembele is going to find another club who's going to be willing to pay him what he wants. And there's only a handful of teams who could really do that, and it doesn't seem like they're looking for players in that position. So very interesting few days ahead. But yeah, at the moment, all the indications are Adama Traore is going to be going to Barcelona, doing a medical and signing there. And I'm not expecting any late Spurs interventions in that. Certainly not.
Can I ask you, Lyall, just on Adama, because it is a story which has rumbled on for the past 3-4 weeks. It's come, good, very good, credible sources, the likes of Sky, have been reporting that Spurs have been in talks with the player. I think the only thing I'm looking at from a fan perspective here, taking again a hat off tonight, we've got someone like yourself that is working for someone like Sky and the obviously credible contacts you have there, is how Spurs got themselves into a situation where they've been negotiating for weeks apparently. And they simply have not got that commitment. Now, again, I understand the player's contract is, coming towards an end. And again, Spurs will have a fee in mind and Wolves will have a fee in mind. Again, there's that point there, but also the concern that this player was targeted, as you will know as well. Because I think, again, Sky did pick up on this. This was actually at the time when Nuno was at the club. Conte's come in, and there is that concern already that was this player a Conte signing, or would this have been a Parategy signing for Conte? Have we already got a situation where that Conte is having players picked for him as opposed to, getting what he wants essentially?
Well, there's a lot of information in there.
Essentially, my point is on this. Essentially, my point is on this. Would he have been a Parategy signing rather than a player that Conte would have wanted, in simplistic terms?
Well, both, I think. Because he was a Paratici. Look, Antonio Conte again is under no illusions that he is working with a sporting director, someone he's worked with for a long time. So they'll agree together which players to bring in, and obviously, Conte will have his recommendations, and Paratici will have his recommendations, and it's up for them as a group to come to some sort of a consensus together as to which players they will target. They're all adults in the room. I don't think there's going to be sort of the kind of tit for tat that you see on social media of I want him and no, he's no good and I want him. Do you know what I mean? They're adults, so they know they have to find a solution. Otherwise, it's not really a workable situation. So, to answer your question, both of them, and I think the sense that I get from what's happened is that along the way, Spurs have obviously believed they had a very good chance of signing Adama Traore in there, but along the way, it's become known that Barcelona have an interest in him. And I think that's turned the player's head in a different direction.
Right. Okay.
And obviously, when you still really want a player, and even though a player's head might be turned in a different direction, but it's still not. The situation at Barcelona is still very, very messy. So if you think about it from Tottenham's point of view, if they're trying to get Adama Traore and he does want to go there, but he's had his head turned by some possible Barcelona interests, because remember it's Barcelona and he has a very strong affinity with them. For a certain portion of the window, they're still going to be holding out some hope that the Barcelona thing won't develop and they'll get the player. But there comes a point where you have to realise that it's going to be a lost cause, or you get to the point where you realise, okay, actually, there's a very strong chance he's going to go there and they can do the deal. And so we have to turn our attentions elsewhere. And actually, I think that's indicated by the fact that the stuff about Luis Diaz started coming out before all this Adama Traore to Barcelona stuff really took hold today. It's been a good few days now since it started to be reported that Tottenham were in talks with Diaz. So I think that's an indication really that probably around that time Tottenham realised that Adama might be looking elsewhere. Yeah,
and just to be clear, I'm not saying at the moment, as much as I love my Spurs and I love them to death, I can't quite say that, joining Barcelona is a step down from Tottenham. So I have to acknowledge the fact Barcelona are one of the biggest clubs in the world, despite some of the financial crisis they're in.
Yes.
It's an attractive opposition for the player because, again, he's played there and, I understand that willingness to go back to La Liga. It's, again, a player that would have divided an opinion, but it sounds for the moment we haven't got to worry too much about it. So we'll put the baby oil order on hold, but we are going to go for our first break of the show for our listeners on audio. For our watching audience on YouTube, there's nearly 1,200 of you watching us live. Thank you so much for your incredible support. We're going to hand back over to Matt to continue the show.
Yeah, look, from one player that isn't coming to Spurs to one who, by all reports, is, and that is Sofyan Amrabat of Fiorentina. He's one of, I'm sure, a number of midfielders that Tottenham are looking at. If, like you said earlier, if Ndombele, Dele Alli do move on, but do we know how far down the line this deal for Amrabat is?
Well, our colleagues in Sky Italy have been leading from the front on this one. I think they revealed the interest in the beginning, and the information that they've relayed to us is that there's been some talks, there's been some negotiations. They've been reporting that Spurs have offered an initial loan, which also has an option to buy him. The information that I have is that this is one of, I guess, many that. I mean, we know Fabio Paratici likes to work in a way that, he lines up quite a few options to make sure that they get something, or get one of their targets. So I think this one is one that they have been preparing. Should they need to bring somebody in if Ndombele goes, and it looks like the likelihood of Ndombele going seems to be increasing. So I think this one's a comfortable stage for Tottenham. I think he's someone they can probably pull the trigger on quite quickly if they want to bring him in. I know he's one of a number of options in that position that they've been looking at and working on. But I think it's an interesting one because doesn't actually seem to be doing that well at the moment.
Well, he can't get in the Fiorentina side at the moment, can he?
Yeah, he's been in and out of the team. I mean, on his day, he looks good on his day. I mean, he's had some of the highlights that I've watched of him. He looks like he glides through the pitch. He's a good ball winner by the looks of it. But there must be a reason why he's not been getting in the Fiorentina team. But I think, if Spurs need a player in that position because they need an option, a more sort of defensive option, which is what he is, more of a sort of, I guess, a backup or a deputy to Højbjerg for a while, a loan with an option makes sense because they can bring him in for 6 months and have a look at him. And then, hopefully bring him up to Conte's level, and then, maybe pull the trigger in the summer, or if he's not up to it, then they can look again in the market, can't they? So it's, I can see why that would be a prudent one to look at.
Lyall, we are going to ask you about other options in terms of midfielders. I think the overriding concern is, and again, this is very judgmental, and you shouldn't really do this because I know you'll shoot me down for saying this. When you go and watch a YouTube compilation of a player, and we've had our hands burned, right? I mean, listen, Vincent Janssen looks. I mean, again, I don't think it's the top.
He looked mint, didn't he, before he came in?
I think it's the Tottenham curse, right? I think you put anybody in a Spurs shirt, and automatically their value seems to drop 50 million. And I might be wrong by this, but I mean, again, when you watch him on YouTube, even the compilations don't look that impressive. So my only concern is, I'm struggling to believe that this would have been a player that Conte and Paratici would have earmarked before the window. Do you think this is one of those opportunistic deals that come up throughout the window rather than one that's been identified in advance of the window, if you see where I'm coming from?
No, I think he's somebody that Paratici and probably Conte have been aware of for a while, and they'll have been tracking his progress for quite a few years while he's been playing in Italy. So I think it's more likely that he's somebody that they've seen have good potential before. I mean, he's only 25 still, so he's not, he's still sort of approaching the best years of his career. He's probably not quite there yet. He's probably not quite reached his peak. So I think he's somebody that they've watched probably for a while and thought in the past, okay, this guy's got some potential, and maybe thought about bringing him in somewhere like Juventus before when they were both there. And then his career's gone in a different direction. And he is where he is at the moment, but perhaps they think he can still come in and do a job for them. So I think that's more likely what it is. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you again, Lyall, for that. Okay. Planets, again, a midfielder that's been linked with Spurs. It seems like this one is potentially not for this window, but you can tell us more. Frank Kessie. Is there any update on that player and whether he is someone that Spurs are still interested in during this January transfer window?
Very much still interested. Yeah. I said it before on the previous pod that Conte loves him. I think he's a great player, and he is, and he's only getting better and better. But unfortunately, he's another one that Barcelona like. There's some interest in him. I mean, I know it's been reported that in some quarters that there's a pre-contract agreement with Barcelona for the summer. I'm told that's not the case. Barcelona are definitely interested, but I think we shall find out a little bit more about this in the coming days because he's about to come back from the Africa Cup of Nations. So I think there will be some meetings probably that will take place when he comes back, and that will decide his future either way. I don't think that there has been any decision from anybody about what should happen in this window yet. I I'm under the impression, I understand that he is quite keen to stay actually and help Milan with their title charge. I think he feels a little bit indebted to them to help push them for the title. And then obviously, if you're a free agent in the summer, it's always going to be a more attractive prospect to the player, because in the summer, A, you'll have more options. B, as a free agent, you will earn more money yourself out of the deal, which is always an attractive aspect for a player. So, Tottenham will need to pull out a pretty special offer to him, I think, and to the club AC Milan to get him in this window. So let's see how that plays out. I really couldn't predict anything at this point on him. I mean, all I can say is that he's a player that they're very interested in and they really like. And again, it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning in terms of things that they've been working on for the summer. That if they don't get him now, they will have done a significant amount of work towards potentially getting him in the summer anyway.
Just sticking in midfield as well, and sticking in Italy, which is a very common theme in Tottenham's transfer window. Looking at Weston McKennie for Juventus, who I think you can look at 18 months ago was but like he's that type of player who the deal that brought him to Juventus is typical Fabio Paratici, one of those that was done behind the scenes, and within 24 hours of the first leagues, he was a Juventus player. And if we're to believe some of the reports that are out there now, Paratici has spoken to his representatives this window, and it seems as though maybe Allegri isn't as keen to let him go in this season, or in the middle of the season, but that interest is definitely there from Spurs, and it will be difficult to get it done. But is there anything on that deal? Is there any potential for that to happen?
Well, just exactly what you said. I mean, obviously you've been reading the right reports, because it is very difficult. It's been very difficult for anybody to get a player out of Juventus this month. We've seen Arsenal have been trying to get Arthur on loan. They haven't been able to form an agreement there. Max Allegri really wants to keep him. Aston Villa are trying for Rodrigo Bentancur, the other midfield, one of the other many midfield players that they have, one of the many good midfield players they seem to have. And Weston McKennie, I think, is in the same boat as those two, if not sort of ahead of them both. And I think in terms of Allegri's thinking, I think he is one of the main ones that he uses and wants, and rightly so, because he's very good, got a big career ahead of him, I think. So I would be very surprised if anything was to materialise for him to leave Juventus between now and the end of the window. I mean, he's got 3 years left on his contract. The club are in a very strong position. I think it's more one to watch in the summer. Again, somebody who will probably have more clubs chasing him in the summer than he has now. So.
Okay, next on the list, Lyall, we're going to focus on some of the outgoing potential midfielders during the close of this window now in the next few days. Obviously, we've seen Conte left out the likes of Dele Alli, Tanguy Ndombele, Lo Celso from his squad ahead of Chelsea. And again, with Lo Celso, we saw him take to Instagram to say that, he's 100% in good condition, physically fit. So, I mean, the first question on Lo Celso, it seems that he's surplus to requirements, and you correct me if I'm wrong on that, and he could still be leaving in these next few days. What's the status with Lo Celso? It seems to have gone a bit quiet now. Do you see a move still happening for him in these last few days?
Possibly. I'm not so sure, though. I mean, that they're all trying to find him an option, I think, where he can go and play. But I'm not aware that he has a concrete option at the moment, which is the case for a few, I think, and it's just the typical of the January market, really. But there's noise and there's possible, there's chat about we could potentially go here, go there, but I'm not aware that he has a solid option. I think the Sevilla thing those links were not quite right, from what I was told. Certainly, if you're a Real Betis player, you'll have a very good job going and playing for Sevilla, because their rivalry is an incredible rivalry. I mean, it's almost the same as playing for Tottenham and then playing for Arsenal, or vice versa over there. I mean, you just don't do it, So I'd be very surprised to see him end up at Sevilla. Of all the 3 midfield players, him, Tanguy, and Dele Alli, he is the one that we know sort of least about, I think, in terms of what options he has, if any. And I think that's an indication of probably the fact that he doesn't really have anything concrete at this stage. So one to keep an eye on. I've got no new information that I can give to you about Giovanni Lo Celso at the moment.
Okay, no problem at all. Before we hand back over to Matt, we are just going to go for our next break of the show. For our listeners that are on audio, for our watching audience, there's still nearly 1,200 of you watching us live. Again, thank you so much for all your support. We're going to hand back over to Matt about a player at the moment that I think it's fair to say is in the headlines this evening. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, it's Tanguy Ndombele. Seems to be the main outgoing that Spurs are trying to get done, and we know PSG are in talks and have been in talks for a while. And even yesterday or the day before, Valencia seemed to try their hand to try and hijack that deal there as well. But do we have any updates on Ndombele?
Well, obviously there are a lot of reports tonight. I'm sure everybody's reading them. I'm sure everybody can see them. That it's edging closer to for him to join PSG. I think on an initial loan. We've got some sources that are saying the same things, and we've got some other sources that are saying that it's not quite as far along as that at the moment. So, that will need some further verification during the course of the evening or tomorrow morning. But we've known that PSG have been talking about a deal for Tanguy Ndombele for a couple of weeks now. So, I think that, this one, I wouldn't say it's been a foregone conclusion, but I think it's been very much, in the offing, hasn't it, for a while. There's been all sorts of scenarios, I think, talks about during discussions. I think there's been a lot of PSG players that have been offered to Tottenham as part of the deal. People like Paredes, the midfield player, I think has been offered. And I've seen Draxler has been mentioned. I think, one or two others. But our understanding is that none of them have really tickled Antonio Conte's fancy. So it looks at the moment that if he does end up at PSG, which all the indications are that he will, it will be just a straight loan, probably with an option to buy. But we'll see. I mean, I think probably the best for all parties. I think if Tanguy moves on at this stage and goes and plays with Mauricio Pochettino, nonetheless, the manager who wanted to bring him to Tottenham in the first place.
Absolutely. Out of interest, Lyall, at the moment, would you say he's the closest out of all the Spurs players to leaving as things stand?
I would say that's fair and accurate at this stage. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's quite interesting. I think it's quite interesting that he's going to go there with the wealth of midfield players that he has. I mean, obviously, it's a great move for him because he's moving to an even bigger club. The biggest club in France, where he's from. The kind of dream the kind of move that he probably would have dreamt about when he was playing in second tier football in France not that many years ago. So. I think he is somebody that can, do a job for them, and is probably not expected to be, the main rider in midfield that's going to start every game. I don't think that he's really going to be expected to be that. So perhaps it suits him in that respect that he can come on and show everybody how great he is without playing for 90 minutes, which he's found it hard to do a lot of the time, I think, during his spell at Tottenham.
He must back himself because, again, there's always been that question over his fitness, hasn't there? When you think about the managers that he's had from Pochettino, of course, then to obviously going to Mourinho, then obviously we had Mason for a period, then we've had Nuno, and obviously now Conte, to go through 4 or 5 managers and just not have that belief that for whatever reason the fitness isn't there. He must believe he must have a lot of belief to go there. I mean, again, Pochettino knows the player really well. Obviously, he was keen to bring him to the football club. Do we understand? I know there's been lots of talk, Lyall, over the wages of the player and how that's being covered. Do we assume that? I mean, again, I know it's part of the negotiation, so you might not know this as of this moment. But are we expecting the wages to be fully covered by PSG?
I don't know whether that's the case. I think that's probably something Tottenham will have wanted as part of it, certainly, because his wages are quite high. But I'm not sure. As I said, this we still need to make some verification checks on what exactly the stage is at and what the details are, and I'm sure they'll come out over the next sort of 12 hours, 24 hours probably.
And just to answer Anthony on the screen there, I think Jason is serving him an Uber XL, I think, to wherever he wants to go his destination. I tell you, Jason, bless him, for the last 4 or 5
years. He wasn't his biggest fan, was he?
No, well, I think Jason would carry him there, to be honest with you, let alone give him an Uber. I think Jason would walk him there. So Jason will be pleased, at least. Right, there's been lots of talk now about possible swap deals involved in Ndombele. So I think, obviously, what you're saying at the moment, it seems like it's going to be a straight deal, which maybe rules these players out, the likes of Gini Wijnaldum. We saw Paredes also being linked. So on those players, I suppose it's irrelevance now, isn't it? If it's a straight deal, they're not going to be involved at all in any aspect of a move to Tottenham.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. No. And interestingly, the information that my colleague Sky Carvey Solokol has been reporting during this window that Ryan Adams seems quite keen to join Arsenal, and we know they want that position. So I don't know if he's a little bit of an Arsenal supporter, but I think from what Carvey understands, his eyes have been looking towards the other side of North London.
God, he must be desperate for football. That's not for you to comment, Lyall. Let's go over
I'll
to
Matt comment on that one.
No, better not get you in trouble. Over to you, Matt.
Look, if we're talking about Ndombele as the most likely player to leave Spurs this window, I think if we're to believe the reports that are out there, Dele Alli could be the second most likely to go, with the club looking to move him on. Newcastle reportedly the front runners for him, and there's interest as well from Borussia Dortmund, Brighton, Everton, and a host of other clubs as well, which I think is understandable given the talent that the player has. But with into the last 4 days of the window now, do you think it's likely that Dele will move on this window?
Well, I think I can actually update you or correct actually a little bit of what you said actually on Dele Alli. I mean, you mentioned a few clubs that I know are definitely not interested. Brighton in the main, I know they're definitely not interested in him. There's other clubs that have been mentioned like Southampton, they're not interested either. I think that Dele is in a bit of a situation at the moment where they're finding it difficult to find a solution for him that suits everybody. That's the way it's been described to me. I think he's low again, like Ndombele, his wages are a factor. He's on a big deal. So I think as far as other Premier League clubs are concerned, they're thinking, firstly, do we need a player like him in our team? Do we need his kind of profile? There's only a certain number of teams in the Premier League who are looking for that profile. I think most teams that I mentioned, Brighton, I mentioned Southampton, they're happy with their options in that position. They're also probably looking at the fact that a succession of managers at Tottenham have not really got a tune out of Dele Alli in for a while. So they're probably thinking, well, how likely is it that our manager is going to get a tune out of him as well? Newcastle have been mentioned. I don't think Tottenham want to help Newcastle if they can avoid it. I think there's still obviously some discontent, shall we say, among a lot of Premier League clubs about this takeover. And I think that, a lot of Premier League clubs in general are not that keen to help Newcastle if they can avoid it. So I think there's an element of that as well.
That's really interesting.
But
yeah.
But we'll see. I think you said Everton as well. I think it'd be interesting to see what happens with the managerial situation at Everton and who goes in there, whether they want to take Dele Alli on. That maybe that could become an option. But at the moment, again, I think there doesn't seem to be anything sort of concrete for him yet. But that's not to say that won't be the case as we get towards the end of the window and things become a little bit more squeaky bum time, as people describe it. When you get to the end,
you just feel. I don't know what you think, Lyall. For me, that Dele, it's got an echoes of a deadline day move because he's essentially not going to get game time at Spurs. Well, I say that if we keep selling, if we are going to allegedly sell, 2 or 3 midfielders, then it looks like Conte's made his mind up on him that he's not going to get game time. So you do wonder, if Dele has got and this is a thing we don't know. I don't know the player personally. I don't know again if Sky have got any sources on this. If Dele has got a real desire to want to go back out there and prove himself again, because I think there has been that feeling just around, I think, Spurs fans, and I don't like talking for everybody, I'm only talking from my opinion here, that just watching Dele, and I think I said this to you before on our last show, just it feels like he's lost the love for the game. And I just want to see Dele go and play football again and be happy, because when you see him on a football field, he doesn't look vacant, doesn't look there. And I just, again, even from a mental health perspective, listen, regardless of whoever plays for who, you don't like seeing people just not being themselves. And I just want to see Dele going out there again and enjoying his football. And if that's not in a Tottenham shirt, then so be it. But I just wish him all the best. Do you know if there's, from Dele's camp, a real buzzing desire to want to go and play football again?
I think there is. I don't think he's lost his love of the game or he's lost his love of football. I think he's just sort of lost his way a little bit. I think sometimes players need a change of environment, a change of scenery to just refresh things. I think you live in the same place, you go to the same training ground every day. Things can become a little bit stale. Things can become. I'm not saying this is definitely the case for Dele, but I think that that he is somebody that needs a change of environment and change of scenery, change of, all that kind of thing, and something that will just sort of rejuvenate him a little bit and kickstart his career for a bit. I think he would benefit from that. I think I think obviously Spurs want to see him playing somewhere because he's an asset at the moment that's not playing, and I think he would want to get out and play and try to to resurrect the player that he was, because he was a great player, top player.
I think absolutely.
That top player is still in there somewhere. It has to be.
Yeah. I can't believe that you lose that overnight. We've seen that ability, early when he broke into the scene, you don't
lose ability overnight. No, absolutely. You can lose confidence. Yeah, exactly. You can lose confidence. You can lose self-confidence. You can lose, your mentality and your motivation, and you might need new motivation, new kinds of motivation, things like that. That's possible. We all go through the ebb and flow of life, don't we? Same for footballers.
Exactly. No, totally agree. Obviously, it's interesting we go to this player next because Newcastle United have been heavily linked with bringing in an English midfielder. If it wasn't going to be this guy, it might be Dele. Jesse Lingard. I mean, this name still keeps popping around at the moment. It'd be interesting to get your thoughts on where things are with Jesse and whether he's still the player that interests Tottenham maybe this window, or again whether he'll be looking somewhere else in the next few days for a move.
I think in the summer there's some interest in potentially taking him on a free, but not in this window, because I think Manchester United have made it quite clear they're not going to strengthen a rival for the top four. So I think they will be very averse to letting him leave on loan for a Tottenham or a West Ham, for example. So there's been a lot of information about Newcastle's chase for him recently. It looks too complicated for them to do as well. I think actually we might end up seeing Jesse Lingard stay and be there until the summer. I can see why he would want to get out on loan. He's obviously thinking he wants to go where he can play the most, because he'll be targeting a place in the England squad later this year. So, but yes, I mean, from Spurs' point of view, it's not going to happen this window, but it might be something they would look at on a free in the summer. It'd be a great free transfer to get.
Good player. I've got done a lot of talking here, so let me hand back over to Matt quickly. Matt, let's bring you back in.
Yeah, I just want to ask you quickly, Lyall, about Steven Bergwijn, because he's a player who there's been very differing reports of what we're getting. I think really since Conte first came in, there were some saying he wanted to play him as a second striker with Harry Kane, others saying he wanted to move him on. And it feels as though that game against Leicester could have been a turning point for Steven Bergwijn, that last 80 seconds when he did incredible things to turn that one around. And I saw some reports today saying we're in the Bergwijn
not quite that far, but almost.
Mini Ajax.
It was a mini Ajax, yeah.
His own little edition of it, but I've seen reports say that we're in the Steven Bergwijn part of the window as we do come down to the very end of it, and we know Ajax have been interested from day one in bringing it back to the Netherlands. Do you think there's a chance that Bergwijn could still leave, or has that 80 seconds turned around his career at Spurs?
Before I say that, I just thought of something. We can stop calling it Fergie time and start calling it Bergie time, can't we now? At the end of games.
Well, depends what you're going to say to us now, Lyall, if we can call it Bergie time, if he's going to be here or not. So he's on the cliffhanger now. Oh, the floor's yours.
Well, I mean, what I've been told after that game, I put out a report saying this, and I was quite comfortable doing so at the time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. But that he's expected to stay. I mean, Ajax are still very interested. It sounds like they're still trying what they can. And actually, he's in Amsterdam at the moment, which doesn't, really help matters. That kind of fuels the fire a little bit, but. He's got friends and family there, because he's from Holland, so that's why he's there. He would have gone there anyway, in a break. Obviously, players have got a break at the moment. They're all going back to their respective countries to see friends and family, as you do. Yeah. So he's in Amsterdam at the moment, but I mean, there was a picture of him, I think, in Amsterdam that did the rounds a day or so ago, and he blew up, obviously, online as these things do, and everyone gets excited. But I would be very surprised to see him go, especially after what Antonio Conte said about him. Really, I mean, you talked about the kind of things that might irk Antonio Conte. I think for him to be put in a position where he's talked about a player that he likes a lot and wants to use and that he wants to stay, for him to then be sold, I think certainly publicly that wouldn't make Antonio Conte look very good. I think he should be aware.
Bear in mind the window's going so far.
Well, so there's that aspect of it, and there's the aspect of it that he's been a player who's been very good. in the last couple of months when he's played, and is clearly an asset. Clearly somebody who can be a danger for them. If they're gonna shift out 2 or 3 midfield players, and only play 2 in there anyway, and want to play 3 forwards, then they're all going to want as many different options as they can. For example, if you bring in a Luis Diaz, it doesn't leave you a lot of room to let Bergwijn go and bring another player in. But if you have 3 positions there, and you have Kane, Son, Moura, Bergwijn, Diaz, competing for those positions, it's quite strong. So we'll see. I'm not expecting him to go.
Can I just ask if
and end up being made to look silly?
You're saying that you expect him to stay. Do you know if that is a desire from Tottenham to keep him, or is there an element of that where they don't really expect Ajax to stump up the cash? Some saying they're expecting to bring back some of that 25 million they paid for him.
Yes, I think they want to keep him. I think what's happened is that obviously Bergwijn wasn't playing for a long time. So I think if you're Ajax and you're targeting a player for January, you're looking at Steven Bergwijn. He's played in Holland. He's proved himself in Holland. He was fantastic at PSV. So they're thinking, right, he should be a target. He's not playing. They will have done all the work to get an idea about whether he would go there. And then things have changed quite dramatically. So I can imagine that Ajax still have this belief that they can get him if they offer enough. But things have changed there. So it's a fluid one. It's not a black and white one. I think it's. I would be surprised. I think that they would have to put in a very big offer that would be just really far too good for Spurs and Steven to reject. And I think that looks like it would be too big, and I think that the club want him to stay, and Conte wants him to stay clearly because he said so enough times. That I think it would cause more problems if he left than solve them. I think that's the best way to describe it. I think.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Right, we are going to go for our final break of the show for our listeners on audio. For our watching on YouTube, there's still 1,200 of you plus going strong. Thank you again so much for all the support.
So it stayed regularly at 1,200 throughout. That's great. So people have
honestly been incredible. I'll say the support's been incredible for the show. I mean, I have to say, well, bearing in mind, as you can hopefully understand, I put this in footballing terms, the distress and upsetting nature that we haven't had one signing yet to cheer about. And again, I do take into account that so far in January, we obviously had Bridgie on last night, one of your colleagues, that we can see that the business being done isn't a huge amount across the Premier League. But I think bearing in mind that where Spurs are right now, they're lingering around fourth. They've got those games in hand. You just feel that if they can just get those 1 or 2 players in the right areas, they've got a real genuine chance at top 4. And that's, I think, again, as a fan, I'm speaking as a fan, I think when you look at bringing somebody in at Conte's level and the nature of just how good he is, if you can just back him with the 1 or 2 players that he needs, then there's a real genuine chance that top 4. And that's why I think there's just a lot of frustration at the moment that they're building up, because it's in our hands. It's actually in Tottenham's hands. So it remains to be seen. I was going to ask you about this player, but then I'm conscious that when I asked you about him last week, I think we both laughed. So I don't think it's well. It was Mohamed Ali Cho, and I think we all came to the conclusion that that maybe isn't going
been offered around to many clubs.
Many clubs. On that aspect, I'm going to ask you: is there any chance of a forward? Are we going to get a Paratici surprise like Brian Hill was a surprise in the coming days? Could that potentially happen?
Well, I mean, the forward they're going for is Luis Diaz, isn't he? He's the forward. He's the
So just to be clear,
striker.
Right. Okay. So what we're saying now is, just to be clear on Diaz, because he plays that functional role of a winger as well. We're saying that essentially is going to caveat that for a forward. Is that what we're saying? On
that's the profile. Yeah, if you want to call it the profile of the player they're after, he is it. I mean, Adama Traore has played through the middle before. So if you think about the different positions that he could have played, they wanted him to be willing to fill in a right wing back.
Right.
If they're playing Kane and Son, or if they're playing Kane, Son and Moore, or they're playing Bergwijn, Kane and Son, etc. But obviously Traore could also have played in one of those positions behind Kane, or even through the middle. So they obviously want somebody who's quite versatile, who can fill a few positions. I think that's the case of Diaz.
Okay, no problem at all. So just so we're clear, if Spurs, in your opinion, if we do get Diaz, that's the forward element of it solved for Tottenham.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, and then probably the most likely thing that would come next would be a central midfielder.
Okay, brilliant. Well, listen, let's hand back over to Matt, who's going to ask you about some outgoings in terms of our defence at the moment. Matt, over to you.
Okay.
Yeah, look, there's quite a few players in that defence that I think fans have become frustrated with over the last weeks and last months, and some that we've heard, Tanganga, for example, there was interest from AC Milan with Doherty. Perhaps that he was one that Spurs were actively looking to move on. But between Matt Doherty, Jaffa Tanganga, and Joe Rodon as well, do you expect to see any of these players leaving the club by 11 p.m. on Monday?
No, I'd be surprised if any of them do. I mean, of all of those you mentioned, maybe Joe Rodon, but I made some checks on him today and was told there's nothing happening with him at the moment. Again, Jaffa Tanganga, we put some information out on him earlier today, made some more checks with people on him today, and was told that he's going to stay. Apparently, Antonio Conte's told the player and the club that he wants him to stay. He's been very good, hasn't he? Filling in, I think, for Christian Romero while he's been injured. And so he's obviously, I think, the signs are that he's going to still get plenty of game time, even though Romero's back. Obviously, Spurs are still in playing plenty of football between now and the end of the season. They will need him, and they're not really blessed with a lot of central defenders. So, and they want to play three of them. So, they need as many as they can get, I think. And there's also not really any viable centre halves out there on the market, I think, at the moment. I mean, I know a lot have been mentioned, but I know Newcastle have been going for all the left-footed ones that I think exist in Europe. But it's been quite clear that they've not really been gettable, and they've been led down the garden path a little bit, I think, on those. And so, I don't think Spurs are going to be wasting any time trying to get Sven Botman out of Lille or Diego Carlos out of Sevilla, because it just doesn't seem possible this month. But I know long term they do want to sign another centre half, a left-footed one, if they can, and I think that's something they'll look to do in the summer when there's more options that become available, because there are some very good ones out there who would be more viably on the market in the summer.
It's interesting, Lyall, you made that point in Jaffa. I mean, personally, I just feel that at the moment, I would have thought he would have benefited for a loan. And I guess, we use the term filling in. He has filled in, but I think on the whole, he has had a bit of a nightmare month where, again, if that's down to, a lack of, the partnerships that he's built up so far across the team, or whether it's an aspect of many, many things, I would have felt for Jaffa that maybe a loan would have benefited him. Someone like Italy, where, again, the Italian league, it's a lot more of a slower pace-based league where, it's a great opportunity to learn the game. You get a bit more time on the ball. I just wonder, the problem with Jaffa is that I still think, and Jason was spot on what he said when he was on this show recently, that it feels with Jaffa, his best game for Tottenham was still that debut game that he had against Liverpool, where he was just phenomenal, and he hasn't quite kicked on from there. And I do think that's down to also, number one, not getting regular game time, and then number two, when he has been in the team, we've chopped and changed the back four, which can't be good for any player. He's young, and I think I can understand why Spurs can't really let him out if we're not going to get any other centre back in, but it may be a missed opportunity, because I think the concern for Spurs fans, again, looking at it as well from my end, is that you look at a player, I would say, like Kyle Walker-Peters, who his value now, I would say, at Southampton has skyrocketed, because he's been ever so impressive. Scored a brilliant goal, of course, against Man City. And, you wonder sometimes that some of these players, when they don't get regular first-team football and they're almost drafted in and then asked to play for a couple of weeks and they don't look great, I don't know what it does for their confidence. So, it's interesting. I say we really do appreciate that. So, I know there's some comments here. We'll just quickly take a few. Is there anyone else at all on the right wing-back spot that Spurs, we haven't mentioned tonight, we could be linked with? I know Lampard is one name that's come up. Anybody else at Spurs?
Jed Spence.
But that wouldn't, obviously, because I know he's played for two clubs, hasn't he? So he wouldn't be able to play.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that'd be more of a summer option.
Yeah, so we talked about the idea that Traore would come in and would be somebody who they could also play at right wing back just until the summer, and then have a look at it again in the summer. There are, again, more right wing back options for them, or they expect to be more right wing back options for them in the summer. But obviously, Jed Spence, you can do a deal for Jed Spence now, ready for the summer. He is seen as being one of the next very good young English right wing backs coming through. And there are a lot of clubs that have been watching him for quite a long time and are very big fans of him. I mean, I've been told that Steve Hitchin has watched him for a long time and has really liked him for a long time. So after that game against Arsenal, a lot of people are saying, well, he had one good game against Arsenal. Now all of a sudden everybody wants him. And actually that's true, but it's not really as cynical as it sounds, because, these players are players that the sporting directors and scouts track for a very long time, and they build up a portfolio of reports on these players, and they get to know these players, and they've always got these players in their minds. And then once they do it against a top team, even if it's just in one game, even if it's just against one top player, but they show that they can do it in that game, then that can be the trigger that is just enough for the scouts to think, right, yeah, all of that stuff that I thought about that player is true, and we should go and get him, and we should go and get him now, because there's going to be other people like me at other clubs thinking the same. So that's the case with Jed Spence. Okay. But interestingly, I mean, there's another right back at Middlesbrough that's arguably as good in Isaiah Jones. But I mean, again, like you said, there's also Tariq Lamptey. Tottenham definitely interested in Tariq Lamptey. We've reported that before. We reported they were interested in the summer. They were. He is another one that looks like he's going to be very, very good. That Jed Spence is one they like. Definitely still interested in him. Definitely still possible that they could go and do a deal for Jed Spence in this window. I don't know whether they will or not for sure. Obviously, it's up to them, but it's definitely possible. It's definitely on the cards. Jed Spence.
Okay,
so, he's the main one I would say that we've not mentioned.
Okay, appreciate it. Lyall, question on the screen just to ask you about this one. This is from Jerome, who says, could Spurs hijack Bruno? I hope I don't butcher this guy's name, so apologies if I do. Bruno, I want to have a go at it. This is obviously risky when you do this. I would say Bruno Guimaraes.
Yeah.
Guimaraes, there you go. I'm not too far wrong. It's a good creative midfield. I had to go there. I had to go. Listen, I had to go.
Give yourself proud.
Also looks like Leon are willing to sell in this window. Is there any chance of a late hijack from Tottenham?
Not that I'm aware of. Not sure. Really not sure. He's not a name that I've been mentioned with Spurs. He's been mentioned with Arsenal. Obviously, Newcastle really, really trying to get him. I've not heard that one.
Okay, no problem at all. Just before I hand, I'm going to let Matt ask you the final question of the show. But before I do, I know on your article earlier on your Twitter you put out that Spurs would ideally look to bring in maybe one midfielder before the deadline if they're able to move the likes of Lo Celso and Ndombele, of course, Dele on. We're already being urged to ask this. Is that midfielder Sofian Amrabat? Is that going to be him, or could it be someone possibly a bit more exciting?
Possible, but not the only option. So,
okay, right, fine, okay. And then a final one here that's just come in very quickly. How about Joachim Meheli, Manuel Lazzari? Are they possible for the winter or the summer?
Joachim Mahler and Manuel Lazzari. Yeah, not two names I mentioned. Joachim Mahler is very good. He's been tracked by a lot of clubs for a long time.
So we can forget him then.
But no, not the one for this window. I think is he thinking in terms of right wing backs? Is he throwing a couple of right wing back names at me?
I think so. Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the other one that I know the Spurs have liked for a long time and tried for him in the summer, but his name's not been mentioned to me for a while, is Dodo at Shakhtar Donetsk.
Okay.
Who, is
that's a new name we haven't. I don't think I've heard.
I think if you Google his name in Spurs, I think you might see that there's been various reports. And
I'll ask Danny Rose to Google him
over the. I like him. I think he's a good player.
Yeah. Okay.
But again, I'm not flagging something they could potentially do in this window.
Yeah.
I know they were interested in it back in the summer.
So what you're saying is, Lyall, no, let's go out and get Dodo on the back of our shirts just yet.
Yeah, no, don't do that just yet. No, and the Tottenham, some of those Tottenham fan accounts. I know they're probably going to quote me now saying Dodo is a possible option for Tottenham in this window. Sky Sports Lyall at the bottom. Yeah, please don't do that.
I feel all load of Dodo plays anyway. The way this window's going.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be lots of Dodo memes being sent my way.
100%. Totally right. And there you go. Comments on screen. Dodo, Richie's at it. Everyone's at Dodo's class. Yeah, everyone likes Dodo. There you go. So
I'll be as extinct as a Dodo.
I think Rob's the best one so far. To dare is to Dodo. So I mean, listen, we can change the name. Why not?
We can end the show on that.
Not that much so far the way it's going. Let's head over to Matt to ask you the final question of this show, and the interrogation is nearly over. Over to you, Matt.
Sure.
Actually, I hope you don't mind, Ricky. I'm going to hijack this just a little bit before we get to the last question. I want to ask about Bryan Gil. Because I know he's one player who has been mentioned a bit with a potential loan move back to Spain, and Nice, I think, are one that are interested. Is that a move that could happen this window?
It's a very good question, actually, because, again, I'm not aware of there being a real concrete option for him in the same way as Lo Celso. I think that he definitely needs to go out on loan, though, if it was up to me, because it was a strange one in the summer to begin with, because I think Tottenham were obviously crying out for quality, and they didn't seem to be going down a trajectory of developing young players. And he's somebody that you would expect would come over to the Premier League and need to sort of play for a team probably a step two down and be developed. Or back in the Pochettino era early on, that's kind of a signing would have made sense, but it didn't seem to make sense at the time. And obviously he struggled to get in the team. Obviously he's very slight, and I think physically he still needs a lot of work to get up to scratch. So I think he needs to go on loan somewhere. Going on loan to another Premier League team, I think, would make sense for him. But
absolutely, or even a decent Championship side. I can't understand, and I don't. Again, if you've got a view on this, Matt, I can't understand why we'd want to loan him back to the La Liga. I mean, I don't see the point of that. Surely we want him to get to know the English league, so he's ready for the physicality of it. Again, I guess it's one we'll have to see. Right, Lyall. Final question. Promise you, it's the final question. We always say these are going to be obviously very, very short, and then they go on like Spurs in a transfer window. So
you want me to do some maths now or something, do you?
I know. Sorry to do this to you, mate. I do apologise. How many players do you still believe Spurs can get through the door between now and the 31st of Jan? No pressure. There's nearly 1,300 lively Spurs fans watching that are on basic.
Hold me to this until I'm in my grave here. I think they'll do one regardless of what happens in terms of outgoings. I think we'll see a new player through the door before Monday. Whether that turns into two or not, I really couldn't say. I think two max. I'll be surprised if it's three. So that's what I said in the last part, wasn't it?
No, you have kept to your word. I mean, you could have said zero and finished us all off. So I
said zero before, haven't I? I think in past windows I probably said
We've been there. We've done it over the last. Can I just say, for any new listeners or new viewers that have tuned in, we've had Lyall on for the last 4 or 5 years. So Paul, Lyall has been through the whole journey from Pochettino to Mourinho to Nuno, for having Mason, and now, of course,
thank you for pointing that out. It's true, yeah.
And like I say, he's been with us for 4 or 5 years, and he's been so loyal to us. So, listen, Lyall, been lovely having you on. Before we get all the social stuff, Matt, it's been a real pleasure having you back on the channel tonight. Obviously, you run a wonderful YouTube channel as well. Where can we find your content, Matt?
Look, again, like I said at the top of the show, it's always a pleasure coming on here with you guys. My channel is Matt Hayes Tottenham Blog, very unimaginatively named, but basically talking about transfers and all that stuff, and complaining about what happens on the pitch when the window's closed. But always, like I said, a pleasure coming on here, Ricky.
Oh, listen, pleasure all ours. Been great having you on with us, Matt, tonight. And Lyall, listen, been absolutely brilliant having you on. I know, again, I said to you, do you fancy it? And it's one of those things where, as always, because the window moves as it does so fast, things are changing all the time. So, listen, it's been really, really good. There's been lots of love for you in the comments here. People enjoying it. I know it's one of those things where we can't really give what we want, what everybody wants as those signings. But Lyall, tell us, where can we find you? If people, I can't believe I'm not looking and searching with you already, over the next few days now, where we can find you, and hopefully you'll be retweeting and celebrating that Spurs have got some players through the door.
Well, yes, you can find me on Twitter. Obviously, my handle is on the bottom there, Sky Sports at Sky Sports Lyall. Obviously, you can read my stuff on the Sky Sports website if you're on skysports.com, mobile apps, and obviously watching on Sky Sports News. A lot of the information comes through me. My role this month is the transfer coordinator, so I'm sort of in the middle of our whole team of reporters. That are bringing all the transfer stories. So it's been a very interesting and fun month, and I'm sure it'll be a very interesting and fun 4 days. And I'm sure come next Tuesday, I'll be a very very tired man, as it usually is the case.
I can tell you,
You
my
better go on
wife.
holiday afterwards, actually. But not this.
I can tell you, my wife, who has got absolutely no idea of football, bless her, she can't. When she keeps saying to me, "I can't wait for this to be over." So even she has now got an element of what is going on, and I can tell her she's been really, really, really loyal, bless her, the last few weeks. It's been testing as a Spurs fan. So again, been lovely having you on, Lyall. Always a pleasure. To Nikki. Like obviously Sky Sports News, of course, deadline day. Last Word on Spurs are also, we're pleased to say, running our own deadline day special. You're going to have Jason McGovern and the crew with us for 2.5 hours of what's going to be, hopefully unbridled joy, but we can't promise that. There will be a disclaimer in there somewhere, and no pressure, Lyall. It's all on Sky Sports.
No, that's fantastic. Listen, if you want to try and check in with me on deadline day, then I'm happy. Come on the phone or something and talk to you for 5 minutes if I possibly can.
You're a diamond. Listen, fantastic. Lyall, always a pleasure. We look forward to, like I say, speaking to you very, very soon. So from Matt, from Lyall, from all of us here at Last Word on Spurs, keep safe, keep well. Fingers crossed the signs are coming. And as always, come on you Spurs.